Welcome back, rockers and cocktail enthusiasts. I'm Lisa Karkos, and I'm thrilled to present to you the latest episode of Nashville on the Rocks. Get ready to be transported to the world of rock and roll as we share some incredible rock tales and whip up some delicious cocktails and mocktails to enjoy while we rock out. So grab your drink of choice, sit back, and let's dive into another unforgettable episode of Nashville on the Rocks. Our guest on today's episode is a highly accomplished drummer with a career spanning decades in the music industry. Best known for his time as the drummer for the renowned rock band Tesla, he's made a significant impact on the world of music. His powerful and dynamic drumming style helped to define Tesla's sound and contributed to their numerous hit songs and successful albums. His talent and passion for music have earned him the respect and admiration of fans and fellow musicians alike. Currently based in Nashville, Tennessee, our guest continues to showcase his exceptional drumming and percussion skills as a member of the rock reggae band Risen the Believers. With his new project, he explores a different musical direction while still bringing his signature energy and creativity to the studio and stage. His dedication to his craft and his ability to consistently deliver stellar performances has solidified his reputation as one of the industry's top drummers. So whether he's rocking out on stage with Tesla or bringing his talent to new audiences with Risen the Believers, he is a musician who continues to leave a lasting impression on the world of music. We hope you enjoy our conversation with our friend Troy Luccketta. Hey, Troy, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. We're very excited to have you here today. This is like a real treat for us. Like, Dan and I have very similar music backgrounds, and we, even though I will say there is a little bit of an age gap between Dan and myself, that's actually one of the things that bonded us the most.
Well, you're a little older, babe. I think,
that's right. I'm a little older, so I mean, I have a little bit more of a diverse palette going on here. But you have done so many things. So for our listeners, we're in the studio with Troy Luccketta. He's very well known for being the drummer of Tesla for
36 years.
36 years. I was going to say 35, so thank you for correcting me on that. Yeah. And then obviously the other projects you've done, you have a very new project with Risen the Believers, which I'd like to touch upon later in the show. But you've just really kind of been in the midst of everything. You've played with so many people. You've done so many tours. You've been in the spotlight for such a long time. So I'm just really happy to have you in the studio today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm happy to be here.
So you're originally from California.
I am.
Awesome.
Bay Area.
Bay Area. Okay. So I feel like that's a very popular place for a lot of musicians that we've spoken to in the past. Like the whole like area for I don't get too many people. It's usually like New York and then a lot of the California area. So that's like really cool. So
Bay Area was much like Los Angeles. I mean, there was just a lot of great music coming out. You had a lot of stars. You had Eddie Money, and you had Santana, and you had Journey, and I mean, the list goes on and on and on. And it was a great melting pot. And growing up, I mean, I'm born and raised out there. So, I mean, I started probably when I guess my very first band I played in was a band called Whisper, and I was 16 maybe. Okay. 17, awesome. And we entered a couple Battle of the Bands.
What kind of band was that?
It was this guy, Scott Payne. He was the writer. He wrote pretty much. He was very, very fluent with the writing. He was a Kiss freak.
Okay.
And there was a band out of Los Angeles called Zolar X.
Okay.
Anybody know Zolar X?
I don't know.
I don't, but that's a fun name.
Look them up. They are the opposite of Kiss, but they're a space band. They were. Yeah. And Scott was a huge fan of that. So Whisper, was a rock and roll band. We were actually playing some Kiss songs. I remember Black Diamond, Do, Strutter, and a few songs like that, which was very cool. And but he would dress up, and we'd have these outfits. And after we won our first Battle of the Bands at Chabot College in Hayward, the next day in the paper, it talks about Whisper taking the stage and, all these great things happen.
That's cool.
And then it goes into the introduction of all the guys. And I'm reading this thing. It says Frizzy Flash on lead vocals and guitar. And it says Dizzy Dazzle on bass. And it was Quasi Quick Licks on guitar and Spunky Sparkle on drums.
Spunky Sparkle.
Yeah. And I had this, I had these red and white knickers, socks pulled up, no shirt, suspenders, big giant red bow tie. My hair was super long. And
oh my God.
Here I am. I'm 17 years old,
That's wild.
Yeah, it was.
Just having such a good time.
I had a great time, and it was, the introduction to me getting going and starting to really play.
Yeah.
Prior to that, I didn't do so well. I had a rough time at school, so It was a nice break.
Did you come from a musical family?
My mom plays piano. I wouldn't say a musical family. My brother played harmonica, and he got into playing some guitar and a little bit. But mainly, I didn't even realize, I didn't even know my mom played piano. One day, I forget where we were. She got on the piano. She started playing this boogie woogie stuff. And I was like, holy crap. Wow, I never knew, And she goes, oh, I really don't play. But she did.
She's being all humble and everything.
Yeah.
She's rocking out.
Yeah, she was. But I have my mom with me to this day. Matter of fact, tomorrow's her birthday. She'll be 89 years old.
On Mother's Day?
Happy birthday, Mom.
Oh.
Yes. So we got big plans
So
tonight and
cute.
tomorrow.
Happy birthday to your mom.
Yeah,
Yes,
happy birthday to your mom.
absolutely.
That's adorable. On
And
Mother's
she's
Day.
my biggest fan to this day. But yeah, that was kind of my introduction to playing in the Bay Area. And then I joined a band called Benny and the Jets. And Benny LaBarge, unfortunately, had passed away recently. But the band Y&T, you familiar with them?
Oh,
Yes.
yeah, of
Okay,
course.
so they have a song called Lipstick and Leather.
Yep.
The original demo was Benny and the Jets.
Okay.
And there's another song they put out on their record called Do You Know? Both of those were recorded with Benny and the Jets. And
Okay.
we were young. I was, in my teens,
Yeah.
And,
I feel like somebody was just talking about Benny and the Jets. Someone that we had on the show recently.
Maybe they're talking about the song?
No.
Oh, no.
No,
I
it may
think
have
you're
been
right.
Paul Taylor.
It could have been. See, Paul, matter of fact, Eric Martin Band, Eric, that's how all this ties together.
Sure.
Because I was in Benny and the Jets. Paul was with, Paul Taylor was playing with Eric Martin in a band called Kid Courage, and they were really great.
That's also
And I
a
had
cool
never
name.
seen them live. I'd always liked what they were doing back in the day. And it's funny because we were talking about Paul earlier. Paul and I played together for a minute, but we never really got to play together because I ran my finger through a table saw.
Oh, sure.
And at that time, yeah, it's still here. I still got it. But you could see. But that was it. And he ended up joining Aldo Nova. And shortly after that, I ended up joining Eric.
Oh, that's cool.
So there's a backstory to all of that. I'm a Bay Area guy. We played all the clubs. All of us were out working and playing and playing a lot of music. And it was a great music scene.
That's absolutely awesome. It's cool to like get a firsthand account of what that must have been like. Just coming in there and like people going to the shows and just like the formative years of that is so fascinating to me. This is why I always say that like Dan grew up in like the coolest time. Like there's no cell phones, no like recordings, like, and then all this great music is happening and you're right there experiencing all of it firsthand.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I think that that's important, and I love to hear those firsthand accounts. So like you're in your teens, you're moving into it. Why drums?
Well, my dad and my mom used to have these parties, and so I remember I was young, and my sister had a party and had a band playing in our house. And I think it was in our house, or it might have been down the street. I can't remember. But I remember this band was playing, and I just sat on the floor as a young guy, young kid. And I sat there and I watched the drummer all night. And
just looked like so much fun.
I just watched him. I was attracted to drums, and I remember they played "Born to Be Wild," and you probably know Dan the break, the big.
Oh yeah, yeah, absolutely, man.
Right. So, any rate, so I just sat kind of there patiently waiting for that drum break because I wanted to catch that feel, and And I was young. I had 2 paper routes that I always pretty much ran, when I was, 13 maybe? No, I'm sorry. I was probably 11. Yeah, because I bought my first set of drums at 11, and I bought my first set of drums through my saving money through my paper route.
Oh, that's really sweet.
This seems to be the story. When you're young, it's always the paper route. There's no other really means of income when you're that young.
Right?
What are you supposed to do when you're like 10?
Yeah, right.
It's either lemonade stands or paper routes.
And I was in the Bay Area, so I had the Green Sheet, which was a morning paper, the Independent, which was a morning paper, and I'd trade off back and forth. And then I had the Oakland Tribune, which I did for a very short time.
Okay.
And I do remember, because I remember coming home and getting ready to fold my papers. I used to hate it when I got a lot of inserts, because you'd have to insert, into the paper, and I'd be, how many inserts do we got today?
Right. You'd have to do all of that.
And but I remember, coming home when Jimi Hendrix was on the cover, when he died, when he overdosed. Yeah. And I remember just being really bummed out about that. And I used to play to, Mitch Mitchell when I was young, the Jimi Hendrix Experience. That was the record I used to play to, along with many records, growing up, a lot of Motown stuff.
Do you remember what your first, rock and roll record was?
Well, I could tell you my first time I remember really playing and learning a song. Mm-hmm. And it was Ike and Tina Turner's Proud Mary.
Oh, it's a great song.
Classic.
Left a good job in the city. Right? We're just cruising like this. And then then stop. Then you get that kick in, and I'd wait for that break to just take off on my drums. And yeah, that was a big moment.
That's great.
That was exciting times back then. But man, when I think back now, to my younger years, and I did a lot of playing. Mm-hmm. I mean, we were out working the clubs.
Yeah.
And
that's kind of what you had to do.
We really worked hard. And in the Whisper Band, we had a lot of gigs. We played a lot. And then I moved to Memphis when I was 17.
Are you serious?
I did. Yeah, to play with a guy, with Benny. And that was before we turned into Benny and the Jets. At the time, the band was called No Thanks. And I had an opportunity to go to Memphis. And I thought, I think I'll do this. And I left Whisper and went and did that. And then we were there for about 6 months. Elvis was in the hospital when I left, 1977. And I remember when I was on a plane coming home, I remember that Led Zeppelin was playing the Oakland Coliseum. And I was thinking, I'm on a plane right now and Led Zeppelin's playing. This is not right. But, and I never got to see Led Zeppelin.
Oh,
so it was one of the bands I didn't get to see, but obviously a big John Bonham fan.
Yeah.
But, I mean... Yeah. So that was a little bit about Benny and the Jets, some of the history. We had done a lot of recording. Matter of fact, you can pick the Benny and the Jets disc up. It's out now.
Oh, wow. Cool.
Yeah, it just came out recently, this last year. What's the guy?
That's good for people to know.
Yes. Along with the Eric Martin, it just came out, our 40th year anniversary, which was all our demos and some of the demos we did. And we were out, we were managed by Herbie Herbert. He managed Journey. And we shared their studio with Journey for a while. We were in there, and we went to Hawaii with him. We played 5 sold-out shows at the Blaisdell Center.
Dang, okay.
And we were out with ZZ Top on the Eliminator tour. I'm 23 years old. So, we, it was exciting and young, and things were kind of happening. But that was the first... record deal that I had ever been part of. So that was an exciting time.
It sounds like things kind of flowed very nicely for you,
They did. Mm-hmm. And looking back, and I was not into playing in cover bands. I played a few covers here and there in some of the bands that I played with. And I told you a little bit about Scott with Whisper. He liked the Kiss thing. And Benny was a Queen freak. So we were playing Stone Cold Crazy, White Queen. We were playing quite a bit of Queen when nobody was listening to Queen.
Wow.
At the time. That was 1979.
When you said something about that you didn't want to play in any cover bands and you wanted that you played covers in the bands, but they're original writing bands, right?
Right.
What made you want to commit more to a writing band than a cover band? What was it about that?
Well, the thing about the cover bands, I don't know. I just wanted to be part I just wanted to be in a band. You know, I just wanted to be part of that group and that chemistry and that formula, you know, and that's what we do. It's like, it's just like, I just want to be in a band, you know. I really never thought, like, I want to go make money and get in a cover band. You know, I never, ever crossed my mind.
Okay.
I never did. I didn't start playing in cover bands until after COVID and you know, with Tesla, which we'll get into that later. But I had never really played in any cover band. So I joined a James Taylor tribute. I joined a classic rock band. I went out with a band called Completely Unchained, which is a Van Halen tribute band. And then I did a little Zeppelin tribute thing. So
that's crazy.
Kind of got my yayas out. And,
you got everything
and
out
just
before.
just had a lot of fun, you know, with that real quickly. It's kind of like for me, it's kind of like the bungee jumping thing, you know. It's like I did it twice, and I'm like, the second time, I'm like, I'm good. I don't really need to, you know. And then I'm just a real creative, I guess, kind of guy, you know. I like to be in the creative, you know, side of things.
You know what, too, Troy, is like you know, like when you're young and you're writing your own music, there's just something really gratifying about actually seeing a song through and recording it, or maybe just playing it out live and seeing the response, right? And it keeps you kind of going, I think, you know, to have that experience.
You know, I mean, it's crazy because we were so young. I mean, I was in 6th grade, and this kid that I played with at the time, it was just the two of us. We were just a 2-piece band, and we were writing songs. We weren't learning songs. We were writing our own little songs, and they might have been 2 parts or 3 parts or a couple simple little things.
Whatever.
But I remember playing in front of my 6th grade class. And we played 2 songs, and it was a big deal, you know.
It's a huge deal.
It really was. Yeah, you're right.
You know,
you're right. It was a huge deal.
We did it. You know, it's crazy.
You're bringing me back, man. It's really cool. I don't always get that far back into my story, but
I just have a lot of admiration for people that just, because songwriting is so hard, and you really care about what you're doing. And I don't know, I just think it's fascinating to hear somebody else start out with the same type of mentality that I did, which is kind of rare these days. You know what I'm saying?
I
don't know.
It's a different mindset, and it's the same thing about you know the game changer in being in a band versus being a hired gun.
Absolutely.
I never wanted to be a hired gun.
What was your biggest influence, band-wise, musical influence, or drummer-wise? You know, did you have one, or was it just kind of a combination of?
Yeah, who's your guy, Troy, or guys that you always reference, maybe in your own playing?
Well, if we're talking today versus 30 years ago, it might be a little different, and not a whole lot different. I mean, the stuff I was just playing whatever I could in the beginning. When I think about, I was playing a lot of Mitch Mitchell. In the beginning, you know, Sabbath, Zeppelin, with, you know, my brother's records, because they weren't my records. My mom's records, you know, Ike and Tina Turner, and, you know, maybe some R&B stuff, which I really never probably played a whole lot of R&B. But everything's just been music, you know, to me. As far as drummers, you know, I think I started zeroing in, and we've heard it from so many, but Jeff Porcaro was somebody I got really greatly influenced with when I was, you know, going through, I guess, you know, the Benny and the Jets. Back to my first experience with Jeff Porcaro was with Boss Gags and Silk Degrees, and Lukather's on that record, and you know, before Toto. So
that's cool.
There was something. When I was in Benny and the Jets, the bass player, Keith Bellino, his brother Steve Bellino, who taught me a lot actually about playing, and we got into some reading and studying together. But I'd go to see Keith, and I'd always hear his brother back there practicing and playing, and he was always playing, you know, a lot of the Boss Gag stuff. And,
cool.
And I was really into that. So, but you know, it was like when I joined Tesla, for me, my role and what I knew what I wanted to be. I had already kind of defined where I was at as a player, and I thought, you know, I'm going to take the middle road between Jeff and John Bonham.
Okay.
And John was my guy too.
Yeah.
But not to the point where I sat and learned everything, And that's what was fun about playing with the No Quarter guys, because I got to do a full show, 90-minute show with these guys, and learn a lot of that stuff, even though I hadn't learned it.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been listening to it forever, but I was like, oh, this is cool.
You got to dig into it more.
I got to really dig in. And when I dig into something, I want to be that guy. I don't want to be me playing me.
Right.
I want to be me playing him.
Yeah.
And
that's cool.
And that's where the learning comes in, and and the rewards,
For sure.
And it's same with the Jeff stuff, and when I learn covers, I try to learn them. My go-to, if there was a go-to later in life in terms of the versatility and all the music that I like to play, it'd probably be Steve Gadd.
Okay. That's really cool.
Yeah, Steve.
One of the greats.
From your hometown.
I know, from good old Rochester, New York.
Not only rain and gray skies all year round, we got some killer musicians that happen to be.
Yes.
Right?
Yes,
That's
great
true.
stories,
Yeah.
I mean.
It's a lot of rain, though, and a lot of gray skies. Sorry, people, but it is. When you got into Tesla, were you one of the founding members, right?
I am.
Yeah. So how did you meet? It was you and Jeff, right?
Well, actually, we're all considered founding members being the original lineup.
Oh,
the
sure.
actual two founding members would have been Frank Hannon and Brian Wheat.
Okay.
Because they were playing in high school together, and they found Jeff.
Gotcha. Okay.
They found Jeff. Jeff came into the picture, and then they found Tommy Scio.
Mm-hmm.
And I was in Eric Martin band, and my understanding, Brian's, at the time, my first wife was a hairdresser.
Oh, okay.
And her name's Linda, and she was cutting Brian's sister's hair.
Okay.
And when Eric Martin band was disbanding and I was going to be moving on, Brian was interested in me. So what happened was Dwayne Hitchings, who's here in Nashville. I don't know if you've heard of Dwayne, but
It sounds familiar.
he was in Cactus, and he's a writer, and he's had some great successes. But he was over at Eddie Money's house.
Okay.
And Eddie's in Oakland. I'm in San Leandro, so we're pretty close, 20 minutes away. He called me from Eddie's, and he's like, hey, man, I'd like to really come over and play you some demos of some stuff in this band I'm working with. And I didn't know about the band at the time, but the connection came through Brian's sister, so now he's producing them, and now he's over there, and he's coming over to my house, and he played me two songs, one called Rock City and one called Restless Hearts, had a drum machine on it.
Okay.
And I remember just listening, and he says, and we had just gotten off the road with Eddie, Eric Martin. We were out doing shows, not like a full road tour, but we were out doing dates with them.
Gotcha.
And Gary Ferguson, his drummer, I became friends. And and he's like, yeah, and if this is something that doesn't interest you, Eddie was asking about you. So it's kind of a win-win. So this is the turning point where I was like, Eddie was asking about me. He goes, yeah, man, if you're interested, and I'm like, oh, I said, well, let's check out what you got, And he played me these demos. They were 8-track demos. And I just remember listening to Jeff's voice. And I was like, that's a really interesting voice.
Yeah.
And I said, I want to check this out. So they were playing in a club called the Oasis.
Okay.
In Sacramento. And they had the band, the drummer, and they knew that they were going to be finding a new drummer. They wanted me to come out and see the band. So I did. They did 2 nights. I remember watching, and they played a lot of covers. They were a cover band putting the originals in.
Sure. They did whatever they could to probably...
Right. Yeah, just to get the originals out. But they were writing originals and writing music, and had this guy they were working with, Dwayne. And I went and watching the first night, and I really wasn't sure 100%. And then the second night I came back to watch him again. I just stood on the front of the dance floor, and I just sat and watched. I remember watching Brian, and he was playing. And I remember watching Tommy Scio. Then I started watching Frank Hannon. I go, oh my God, this kid's ridiculously talented. He's 17 years old.
Oh my God.
At the time, yeah, man, he was freaking playing behind his head, chewing on a guitar, and all kinds of stuff. Love. Seriously, I mean, it was really kind of overwhelming with how good he was. And then I remember watching Jeff. And once I started watching Jeff, that was it. I never took my eyes. I never watched anybody else. I just sat there all night and watched him. And when I left that night, I thought, man, he had me. Mm-hmm. I mean, I just never took my eyes off him.
Yeah.
And
that's a good sign, huh?
Yeah,
Sure. And it was just, I thought, man, this kid's got it, man.
Yeah, he has a super unique killer voice.
Yeah, and he had a really unique voice.
Very charismatic.
And he's just a sweetheart as a person to this day. He's wonderful. We talk still and just talked to him recently. But yeah, that was it, man. And I was like, I told him, I said, yeah, I want to do this.
Oh, that's so cool.
So I wanted to, and that was the game changer for me, like, because I think in situations like that, it'd be really easy to pursue the hired gun situation. Mm-hmm. Especially Eddie Money was hot at the time, big time, man. He was killing it.
Absolutely.
And I loved Eddie Money. And we were out there, and I was like, I kind of got a shoe in already on this thing.
Right.
And
you can't go wrong. Like, you're like,
and I was 23.
This is 24. A solid thing.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And that was another thing, it was really cool. And the other thing that happened too to me, I had a couple opportunities. That was one. This is the game changer. But when we were out with Journey with Eric Martin before the band broke up, and right prior to Dwayne coming to my house, Steve Smith from Journey, the drummer, he'd sit behind me every night. Steve was great. And he really complimented me on the record, loved the record. And now we're out on the road with Journey. And he pulled me aside. I don't know if I've ever shared this story or not.
Exclusive here on Nashville on the Rocks, maybe.
I'm not sure. I've shared the story, but I don't know if I've really. But anyway, point being, he said, "Hey, Troy," he says, "I got a great gig for you." And I'm like, "Great gig for me. I'm out here freaking with Eric Martin Band opening for Journey, and you're telling me about another gig? Why would you be doing that?" Maybe he knew something I didn't know. I should ask him next time I see him. No, but he's like, "Yeah, man." He goes, "I just got done recording with Bryan Adams." And he had recorded, what was the slow song?
Cuts Like a Knife? Or is it after?
It was the big slow ballad.
What year are we talking?
Oh my God!
With what's her name from Scandal? That one, that ballad?
No.
Everything That You Do, I Do It For You.
No,
that's later.
Oh, it's something Heart maybe. Anyway,
I think I know what you're talking about.
I can't think of the name of the song.
We'll look it up and
you guys, if you remember out there and you're watching this, just let us know. Just scream it into and type it after this is taped.
but I remember he had been recording with Bryan, and so they had a relationship. Mm-hmm. Now at the time, Frankie LaRocca, who played with John Waite and did a record called Temptation, he was playing with Bryan at the time.
Okay.
When he's telling me this story, and he's like, "Man," "you'd be perfect. I'll call Bryan," and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, I decided not to. I declined it. Yeah. I declined because I was already in Eric Martin Band.
Sure.
And I was happy, and I thought we were kind of going somewhere. And but the fact that he saw something in me, I thought that was really cool. It was flattering.
So cool.
And I probably wouldn't have been the guy when I think about it. I don't think I was mentally prepared for that gig. And even Bryan and I are close in age. But always a fan, man. I loved his music, and that would have been great. But Mickey Curry, who did his records, in my mind, it's like, man, I don't even know if I'm good enough. I don't even know if I'd make the audition. You know what I'm saying? But he saw something in me to think maybe I would,
Well, you're a really sought out drummer. That's the thing, is that people that I've talked to, your name comes up a lot, like when we talk about Troy Luccketta, people always have something cool to say, or a tie there that you've known someone or you've done something. So I think that's very telling when people talk about you when you're not in the room.
And another thing too, I bet you anything, I bet you play from a songwriter perspective. You serve the song You know what I'm saying? Whatever's in,
I could see
you know what I'm saying? Like maybe you just have that producer mind or writer mind as a drummer as well.
Sure.
I mean,
you can fit into anything maybe.
That's you've definitely nailed that. I mean, that's all I do is play for the song. I'm a song guy. I love songs. You know, I've had some crazy experiences. I don't know if we'll end up talking about Keith Emerson at all. I don't even know if you know the story, but but that's a whole different experience, and that's playing to play. But still, I got a chance to play musical with him. I recorded a record with Keith and an orchestra, 70-piece orchestra in Germany. And
wow.
Even the conductor, he called me, he goes, Troy, man, we're mixing the record the best. He goes, the thing I really love about your playing most is I can mute the orchestra at any time, and I always know where I'm at in the song.
Yeah.
And that's just because of my song choices.
Sure.
You know, the song inside of me, the way I play the song, because it's a song, and I try to be, and Tony Brock from the Babies, I was a huge fan of.
Oh,
and coming back to that story with Steve, you know, in my mind, I just wasn't quite ready for something like that.
Sure.
You know, and but thank you, Steve, for thinking of me.
So I kind of wanted to ask you, like, going back into like when you started playing with Tesla, and you guys are all the founding members. Did you all share in songwriting?
Yeah, we
did. That's cool. Was it an easy process?
Yeah. We didn't have a fluent writer in the band as far as like just, here's a song, here's a song, here's a song.
Yeah.
We didn't have it. It was, here's a riff.
Yep. And
Let's
you all
groove on
worked
this
together.
riff. Let's see if where we can take it. Sit there and work. Transist. Jeff would scat out some melody of some kind, not really sing, and you know.
Then you work on it together.
We would sit there and build the song and build the songs. There were things later, you know. I mean, after we broke up after the first 10 years and got back together, everybody had drum machines and studios, and now everybody's has some.
Sure.
Songs. But in the beginning, man, a lot of it was coming together through the band.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the band was the song at the same time. But, Jeff, he was the prolific writer as far as the lyrics go. And the only writer for the most part. Later that changed. Needed a little help here and there. At times we would be crushed for time and working on the records, and the producer would get with them and they'd work together. But yeah, no, we were the kind of band that just spent the first year before we even got the record deal. We were rehearsing. I think the first 3 months I was with them probably 6 days a week, 10 to 12 hours a day. Rehearsals.
Are you serious?
Oh yeah. I gave up everything. I didn't.
Whoa.
Nobody was making any money. I had to talk to my wife about it at the time when I made this decision to do this. And it was about 9 months together before we showcased and got a record deal. It happened pretty quick. But we had like 50 songs. We had all kinds of songs. We wrote. We were a writing machine, man.
Dang.
We did not stop. And when we did cut back, we cut that back to maybe 5 days a week to 10-hour days.
Wow. Well, no wonder.
I mean, we never. Yeah. Oh yeah. It was our life.
No wonder you guys are so good.
Well, I mean, it plays a big part.
Sure.
And when bands were, I think, if you were to probably talk to the guys at Metallica and a lot of these bands, I mean, that's what we did. That's all we knew. I mean, it was 24/7. The band, it wasn't like, let's get together and rehearse for a couple hours.
It was like a full thing.
You know what? And just as a fan, listening back to the records and being on the radio, it just seems it's obvious to me now, that you guys cared about the music, and you could tell that you were all about the songs, the great songs that came out of Tesla. It's classic rock, man. It's like it's always going to be there forever. And I just think you could tell about bands that care about, the details of writing a good song. You know what I'm saying? And they put their passion.
Absolutely. We learned a lot about, and then when Dwayne Hitchings got involved, he taught the band a lot about songwriting, because he was a songwriter and he was a co-writer, and at the time I think he had did he co-write Betty Davis Eyes? I'm not sure, but he produced or did the Kim Carnes thing. He had a song with Rod Stewart out, because he played with Rod as well. Passion, I know that was his. Do You Think I'm Sexy? Is he on that? I know Rod.
No kidding.
Is he on that? Along with Carmine Appice is a co-writer on that.
Okay.
Another phenomenal, great drummer.
Oh yeah, he's killer.
But I mean, we were learning more about songwriting, and taking songs to different places. Like, well, that's good, but with this, it's not transitioning. The chorus is not lifting. The melody's not strong enough. You know, and approaching
you're like refining everything that you're doing, and you're getting better at it.
I don't know if you're familiar. I mean, a good example with the producers coming in. We had our very first single, "Modern Day Cowboy."
Yeah.
The chorus was a double time. Before it had this. I remember our producer saying, "We got to change that Eleanor Rigby chorus," and I'm like, "Eleanor Rigby chorus? What's he talking about?" It had a double time, and it went, and I thought about it, because how did it go? Modern day cowboy, you're the sinner, dump. And it's like, oh, look at all the lonely people, right?
Oh,
okay. It had the same melody, and I was like, oh, that's what he's talking about. And I'm thinking, oh my God, these guys are going to come in and screw up the song, right?
No.
Well, I'm married to the demo, right?
Right.
I'm demoitis, you know? And this was a big moment in, just like turning the light switch on, turning, the light bulb, like, oh. And then we ended up with that freaking slamming chorus, you know? And it just turned it went from this pop thing, to this heavy, cool, different thing.
Can I ask you about that song, man? Like, did you have the pre-chorus, like, before the new chorus that you made that's now what we all know as Modern Day Cowboy? Like, or did you have this killer chorus and you had to write a part before it to lift to go to that new chorus? You know what I'm saying? Do you remember how that happened?
We rewrote the chorus completely.
Wow.
All the music, the melody, we just took it somewhere completely different.
Yeah.
I wonder if Brian probably has the original demo, I'm sure.
Man, well, you know what? I think it worked, man.
yeah, it did work. Yeah,
I think it worked.
I think it works.
Well, I want to dive more into this, but I think at this moment in time, we're going to take a little break so I can get some tools together. So you've seen the show. I've sent you a couple of clips, and what I do as part of the show is I teach my guests how to make a cocktail, but you don't drink. And I love that.
I do drink.
We drink water. But I love that because for alcohol, so I'm going to make you a mocktail. So would you be cool if I made you a mocktail?
Sure,
I could teach you something, and then maybe if you like it, you can have, you can incorporate that into your water breaks.
I like that.
Okay.
That'll work.
All right, cool. We'll be right back, guys. Thanks.
Hey everybody, Tony Harnell here from TNT. You are listening to or watching Nashville on the Rocks.
So let's dig into this mocktail, okay? So so this mocktail, okay, so this is going to be made with Seedlip. Now, I've never used this before, but this is a distilled non-alcoholic spirit. This is called the Garden 108. So this is a sponsor for us. This is really interesting because I've smelled it, and it does smell very herbal. Now it says, what to drink when you're not drinking, distilled non-alcoholic botanical drink bottled in England. So it sounds fancy. Okay, so there's a whole market out there. You've seen it since COVID, even a little bit before COVID. Like if you go out places, a lot of people will have a mocktail section. I have a ton of friends that I've worked with over the years that are still in the industry that just don't drink anymore because they overdid it. So like, I'm a big fan of this. I love that.
That guy.
Yes. So, which I get. Yeah. So, all right. So I've washed my hands. So we're going to put some ice in here. These are all different size glasses, but it's cool. We're going to make the best out of it. Now, I don't know if you want this to be a little bit more crisp. Mocktails can have a tendency to get a bit sugary, which is why I enjoy the Seedlip because it's sugar-free. So anything that you add in addition to that would be excess sugar or calories or whatever. So I do have a couple of mixers, but we can go a little light. We can cut it with club soda. You know what I mean? We can just do a splash. So anything we want to do there. So let's pour a little bit of this in, see how this goes. All right, so I'm eyeballing this here for those of you at home, but I'm thinking this is about an ounce, maybe an ounce and a half.
Looks like an ounce.
Looks like an ounce. Okay, it looks good. It looks good. So this is the little bottle, which I really dig. These are 700, no, sorry. God, this is so small. 200 milliliters. Man, I'm just like...
You got some good eyes, you can see.
Man.
I don't know. This is really tiny, like
Right,
even for
that's
me.
what I'm saying.
Okay, so we're going to put this with this Fever Tree ginger ale, which I am a fan of. Oh, there we go. There we go. We hear all those bubblies. Yep.
Sounds delicious already, babe.
All right, so this is also, Troy, the first time I am trying this too. I have never tried this before. So I'm excited about this. This will be a first for me too. We're going to top it off with a little bit of lemonade. I think that'll be nice. And then if we want some extra bubblies, we can top it off with some club soda, which is a great alternative to like having some bubbles but not having any additional calories. And guys, as you know, I'm always going to link what this mocktail is in the comments. So try this at home. If you see Seed Lip out there, I'm pretty sure you can get this at most like liquor stores. So, you know, give it a try. There's a couple different flavors. But here's yours. Now I'm just going to add a lemon peel with this. And for all of you that are trying to peel lemons at home, I don't know if I have to explain this to you, but I feel like the need to, because I've seen so many bartenders go to the ER for taking off their fingers or part of their like nail. What you want to do is peel the fruit away from you. Don't just like this. Don't do this, because that's bad. So
You mean the Dan way. Don't do it the way that Dan would do it.
Don't do it that way, because I'm telling you, like, it's not worth it, you know? Yeah. So I just do it like this. I peel it away. Yeah, because after I saw so many people going to the hospital, I was like, I cannot believe that, like, this is actually like a thing. So, and we're just rimming the glass a little bit with this lemon peel for those of you guys that are listening on audio that aren't watching this, which I think is just a nice little extra touch. So I'm giving you
All that bartending, see?
all that bartending over the years, making fun drinks. I make a lot of Jack and Cokes, but I also try to make some fun stuff. You can, oh God, actually I left these out there because I was going to put the peel in it and I forgot. So, but you can stir it. Yeah, let's go ahead and stir it. These are sharp, so just be careful. I actually got these on Amazon. I think Dan got them for me, and they're super cool. So I'm a fan of. Oh my God! All of a sudden, Troy couldn't play drums anymore, and it was all our fault.
911.
All right, so I'm gonna give this to Dan.
All right, Dan.
Oh, jeez.
All right. I guess I could have
Surprised
had
me.
you like actually
There you
make
go.
this, but I feel like you got the gist of it. You just pour, and pour, right?
So we're
That was good.
toasting and
Yeah, we're toasting. Thank you for coming on the podcast.
Yeah, thank
I
you.
appreciate
My
that.
pleasure.
Let me try to
Yes.
reach out there, mister. There you go.
Oh, hand
Here you
drink
go,
before
babe.
everybody.
try
Okay.
this.
Cheers.
About me. Cheers.
All right.
All right, let's do
Thanks,
it.
guys.
Thank you.
wow,
Refreshing.
Oh, I like that.
I do like that.
Yeah, that's
It's
really
very
good.
refreshing.
Super
This
refreshing.
is a poolside drink.
Oh, this
Yes.
is great.
Right?
I'm all about the poolside drinks. And
You know, the
honestly,
thing about drinking, I mean, look, I'm very experienced in that area along with other things, but I am 30 years sober, and there's a reason for
wow,
that.
good for you.
Right? I mean, you can't do all that touring with a rock and roll band and, you know, not end up in frickin' treatment. I mean, come on. You know. But hey, you know, I was one of those guys and I managed to do that. But, I mean, the thing about drinking, though, I talk about poolside drinking, you know, and you drink in the daytime in that hot sun, man, and you just bake. It just seems like it just intensifies it so much more, right?
It does.
Yeah.
You know,
Yep.
and it just wipes you out that much quicker,
Yep.
you know.
Yep.
I mean, to give you an idea of what it was like when I did party, I remember being, as a young kid, at the Rolling Stones concert at the Oakland Coliseum
Oh, cool.
in the stadium. I said Oakland Coliseum, actually Oakland Stadium. And it was so amazing. I remember I must have smoked so much pot or something, because I remember waking up baking in the seat. You know,
Oh, no.
because I probably, you know, just
Yeah, you just
smoking
passed
pot,
out.
walking around, young kid, and hanging out, checking out music. But what a freaking awesome day it was! It was the coolest thing. You know, I mean, I got to see the Sex Pistols last concert.
Wow.
No kidding. Yes.
That's awesome.
I mean, how cool is that? You know, at Winterland, yeah. I was a young kid running around, man. Winterland was a hot spot in the Bay Area.
Okay.
San Francisco.
Sure.
You know, and I'm not sure. You're maybe too young. Maybe you don't know.
I've actually never been to San Francisco. I've never been to California.
Well, you're going to have to get there.
I know. I'm going to have
beautiful.
to go. Mm-hmm. I've heard really nice things.
I mean, I loved growing up there when I look back. And I used to bounce back and forth to L.A. Benny and the Jets, we were opening at the Starwood for a band called Snow, which was Carlos Cavazza. Is that how you say his last name?
Yeah, Cavazza.
Yeah, he was before he joined Quiet Riot.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah, so, I mean...
It's just like a bunch of the same people that like you get to see over time. That happens, you know.
It was such a great scene, man, especially you had that whole freaking crazy, awesome, you know, rock star... you know, Sunset Strip thing happening back in, you know, the late 70s, early 80s. I mean, and we were part of that, you know.
Yeah, 100%.
But anyway, it makes me think of the Tropicana Hotel and sitting by the poolside and having those drinks we're talking about. And but this is refreshing.
Oh, good. I'm glad you like it. Yeah.
I will take this.
Yeah, actually, I have something to give you.
Absolutely.
I do. I have one of these to give you with this, and then, you know, just a little bit of lemonade and top it off. So,
good.
Yeah, it is really tasty.
Yeah, I highly suggest it for all you listeners.
Yes, it's herbaceous. Thank you. It's herbaceous, and it's got a little bit of citrus in it, and it is really nice. So, big shout out to our friend Clayton for hooking us up with this.
Good job, Clayton.
Yeah.
Clayton, you're the best, man.
He's gonna like that. So you were in Tesla for such a long time. And you guys did all your writing together. Like we've talked about the evolution of that. Do you have a favorite album that you guys did?
You know, for some reason, I go back to a record. It's been a third studio album. It's called Psychotic Supper.
Okay, that's a cool name.
And I think I was just trying to get sober back then. It was 91 when we were doing that record when it came out, because maybe it was 90, because I went into treatment in November 91, November 21st. I came out, stayed sober for 18 months, had one relapse, and boom, here I am, 30 years sober now.
Oh, good for you.
Wow. Yeah, right. But that started my journey. But so we were just that was the record that led us into headlining arenas on our own.
Oh, sure.
Yeah,
for sure.
And the experience, we recorded it in New York, in the city,
which
was really cool. We all had apartments out there. Everybody was going out every night and, you know, getting in late. You know, in the rock and roll world of making records and rock and roll, maybe that could go for any genre. But for us, you know, I mean, it was all about getting started. If you got there by noon, you were doing good. There's no Nashville scene there.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? You're not punching clocks, and you could be waiting on somebody for a couple hours.
Right.
Because he'd been out too late the night before, getting in at 4 a.m, you know, whatever it was. But there was...
Troy, just for the fans out there, man, talk about some of the songs that were on that record that put you over that top when you started doing arenas. Like, what are the songs that came off that record that were on videos and that type of thing?
Well, I think, What You Give.
Right.
That was a big track. What songs were we did?
It was Love is
Edison's Medicine.
Was it
Love Song was the second record.
Okay.
That was 1989.
Okay.
And that was, you know, all these records, you know, we were really blessed. We recorded them up in upper state New York in Bearsville Studios.
Oh, cool.
3 records we did up there. But when we were in the city, that was a different experience. But the Psychotic Supper record, I was getting sober. I remember being trying to figure that thing out and how to stay sober, which I was just starting my journey, you know, because I knew that it was time, you know, that I needed to do this. And but the band was out, you know, every night having a good time. And I remember it was probably in the photo shoot that there's a photo shoot, and it's, I guess, I don't know if it was on the back of the album cover or the sleeve, but everybody's laying on the floor and looking up, and we're all, and those guys are in rare form because they truly were, like, just recovering, from that evening. But it's those magical moments, that you capture when you're out just living the dream, right?
Sure.
You're living it. It's a lifestyle.
Did it feel isolating?
Well, I had to isolate myself at times because I knew it was my journey, not theirs. So, when I got out of treatment, I checked myself in. Nobody knew.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, and I got out. I went in November 21st, got out December 21st. 9 days later, we're playing Tokyo Dome with Metallica.
Oh, shit.
Yeah, on New Year's.
Oh, my God.
So, wow. Right?
That's like the biggest celebration.
Yeah, and so, I left after we got done playing. I had went to a meeting that morning. I learned how to take care of myself. The treatment facility gave me all the tools I needed to get sober. So I did it through the 12-step program. I just went to meetings and found my way around. And it wasn't easy. It wasn't fun. There weren't cell phones. There wasn't an internet. It wasn't that thing. I'd have to pick up a landline, try to find a meeting,
Yeah.
But it was worth the work.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
I put the work in, and I love being sober.
Yeah, that's great.
I still have a great time, but I had to, the isolation part, I tried not to do that with the guys. I wanted to hang with them. I wanted to go out, and just when I got to that point where I'm like, I think it's time for me to leave.
To go home.
Yeah. But
just to chill.
Off the bus, we were on the tour. That's all we did was tour.
Yeah.
We were always doing world tours. So, first 10 years, man, it didn't stop.
Like you said, like during COVID, you had like some cover bands you were doing, and then you had been playing with Tesla before that. You guys have actually you've moved on from that, and now you have a band called Riz and the Believers.
I do. Riz he's 30.
Okay.
So much like yourself. I'll be talking to him. He doesn't know who Jimmy Page is.
Oh, no.
He didn't know who Tesla was. He didn't know anything. No, he's listened to reggae music and rap.
Okay, so
that's what he grew up on.
It's not even just an age thing. It's a different.
It's a whole different, lifestyle and genre,
right?
That he's grew up with, but no, he did. I talked to him. It's really cool. It's very refreshing, actually, and I think that's the charm and the beauty of what it is we do together.
Okay, yeah, that's cool.
So the backstory to me hooking up with Riz, my son, before COVID, my son was producing Riz. And I went out, my son had a surgery, so I went out to spend some time with him. I spent 3 weeks in California with him, and I walk into his garage, because it's a tri-level, going to enter in through the bottom and climb the stairs and go see my boy. And Riz is on an air mattress just waking up.
My God.
That morning.
In your house?
In his house.
In his house.
Because my son was producing him at the time.
Oh, okay.
So that's how I met him. And the Cliff Notes version is I spent 3 weeks there, and my son's like, "Hey, Dad, I need you to help me out with some drums. Could you put some drums on this stuff?" And I did, and we did 5 songs, I think. And I think it was right before I left, I asked my son what he was going to do with Riz. I said, "What are you doing with this kid?" "Well, I'm producing him, Dad." I said, "Troy, this kid's a superstar." I said, "I'm sure of it." And I said, maybe we should try to take management on him.
Yeah.
Talk to him. So I said, us not being managers, I said, I'll partner up with somebody else. So basically that kind of led into a conversation that we had, and Riz was cool and said, "Yeah, okay, let's check it out. Let's see what we can do." And
is he from Nashville?
COVID hit. He lives in Reno. He's here now.
Okay.
Reno, Nevada.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
My son's in the Bay Area. So COVID hit, shut everything down, and a couple of years ago, I just called him up and said, "What are you doing?" And he said, I've done about everything I can do here and maxed out everything here in Reno." And I said, "Look, man," I said, what do you say we finish what we started, kind of thing. 4 days later, he got a one-way ticket and he's been here for 2 years.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And now the record's pretty much done, and
awesome.
We're just putting out his music, and the first single's Don't Stop Trying. It's Riz and the Believers with a Z on thebelievers.com, and all the socials are there. So we put out the EP yesterday.
Yeah, I saw that
Congratulations.
That just came out.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, this is good timing. So for you guys at home, we are doing this a little bit earlier. So this is, at this point, it'll probably be out for a couple of weeks. But so at this point, I'm super excited to hear the rest of the album, and we'll definitely keep supporting and putting it out there and sharing the links for you guys. We saw that Michael Sterato shared it, yesterday. So that was fun.
I was out last year. So Gary Peterson, the drummer for who Michael plays with in the Guess Who, had they called me on the manager called me. Gary couldn't make a show, and they called me on Saturday, and we talked about it. And he called me back Monday and said, "Hey, have you given it some thought?" And I said, "Well, if you got some other guys out there that he goes, oh, we got guys that can do the show right now, but everybody was asking about you." And I said, "Really?" I said, "Okay, I'll be there." The only reason I had second thoughts of maybe jumping in on it, because I figured if they have somebody that already knows the show, because they called me Monday. I had Tuesday. They're sending me the tracks on Monday.
Okay.
I had Tuesday, Wednesday to rehearse, jump on a plane Thursday. No rehearsal, play the show Friday.
Right.
And it was a full show. But it was great. It worked out great. And short story, Cliff Notes version of that is I spent about 7 months off and on filling in for Gary, about 35 shows through the year. And then I got to a point where I was like, man, I got to really get committed to Riz and finish this thing. So, and that's really where my heart is too. I love the music. I'm, it's a different genre of music for me. It's not like I'm not familiar with the whole reggae scene.
Well, sure. Well, and how does songwriting work in that sense?
Well, Riz, the way it was presented to me at the time with my son, because I was like, where's this music coming from? My son's tracking vocals and putting loops, and now we're putting drums, and he would license these tracks, so here we'd have these great tracks, but now they're licensed tracks. And I'm like, so when he got to Nashville, I'm like, Riz, we got to re-record all this stuff.
Okay.
And that's where I started, I said, we're in freaking Nashville. I can get your record done next week. I said, but that might not be the record we want, So I said, let me see what I can put together with some players. And I was out with, the Guess Who, and Michael Sterato was there, Michael Devin, before he went off and joined the Dead Daisies. We were playing together. And so played them some of Riz's stuff. They liked it, and they jumped in on it. John Salloway, local singer-songwriter, I'd been doing some work with him, playing out with him. And then Peter Keys, he came in kind of a little bit later in the game after we had talked about doing something together. And I said, hey, check this work out this kid I'm doing, and see what you think. And he goes, man, I love it. I love reggae music. I'm a big Marley fan, and blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, cool, man. So once he put his clav and his B3 on there, I'm like, there it is.
Yeah.
And then it was real clear to me that we had a group of guys that could do the record and that were passionately involved, as opposed to just hiring guys,
Yeah.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
they've got more, they've got an interest in.
Yeah, they have a vested interest in it.
Yeah, they do. They really do. And they care about it, and they like it. And now we've got this cool thing kind of happening. And
that's
now
awesome.
we got to get it out there.
Yeah, now you got to put it out in the universe and just be like, hey guys, this is the next best thing that we have. Well, and I'm sure so many people will be really excited about that. So do you have a show coming up with Riz at all?
Well, I think there's something coming up. There's a reggae festival here in July that we're doing.
Okay.
Which is, I forget, it's about hour and a half from here. I'm not sure. I forget where he told me it was going to be. We did Reggae Rise up in Florida on the Sugar Shack stage.
Oh, nice. Okay.
And that's, you can look them up. They have a lot of reggae artists the biggest that play the Sugar Shack stage. They had Sugar Shack has been around for 10 years, and we did the morning Nashville show.
Okay,
and then Eddie,
I saw that.
Yeah, Eddie, the guy that started this 10 years ago, happened to meet up with John through a Facebook. They reconnected, and they had known each other from years ago. And then Eddie was kind of keeping an eye on what we were doing, and we had bought tickets. We were all going to go to the Reggae Rise Up because the Marleys were on it, Slightly Stupid, all these great bands. And just so happens he called and said, "Hey, man, how did you like to open up the Sugar Shack stage?" And so we did.
That's awesome.
So we've done some really cool things. Went to Jamaica. We recorded with Squidly in Tough Gong Studios, which was Bob Marley's studio that was built and put together, if I understand it correctly. His wife, after Bob died, put Tough Gong together. That's what was Bob Marley's nickname, Tough Gong. So Tough Gong Studios. So we go out there. Riz wanted me to see Stephen Marley was playing at the City Winery, and John had given him tickets, Salloway, our guitar player, and Riz, he said, "Man, take Troy. I really think Troy should check out Stephen. He'd like it." So we did, and I loved it. And Squidly, the drummer, he had come out and said hi to me, and we started chatting, and we kind of hit it up, and I said, "Riz," I said, "meet Squidly," and I said, "Squidly, we're doing kind of a reggae thing," and I go, "Hey, man, start rapping, do something, man." And he did, and then Squidly jumped right in, and he started doing this Jamaican thing, and they just kind of connected.
Oh, nice, very cool.
Next thing I know, he's inviting us to Jamaica to record Bob Marley's studio, take it to Bob Marley's house.
Oh, wow.
And he did all these things. We
That's
spent
awesome.
a week there. It was really, very cool.
Very cool.
And he's produced Stephen Marley, Ziggy Marley, and he has quite a history, 40 years with the family. And so anyway, he gave us an amazing experience. We went out there and we recorded some steel drum and some background, and we did a lot of percussion that I had done. I said, "Man, Squidly, just redo it." And he did, and it just kind of brought that cultural sound to the record. You could kind of hear it.
Sure.
Absolutely.
In some of the songs.
Mm-hmm.
And, but it just... Yeah, man, all these things just keep lining up. The energy that surrounds this is huge.
To end on this, I definitely want to, share the links of Riz and the Believers, your new EP, and it sounds like anything that you're going to do in terms of shows or anything, like keep a lookout for that, guys. And then we'll share them too. So
beautiful.
I'm so excited about it. Is there anything that you want anybody to know in addition to anything?
Well, just, check out Riz and the Believers. There's Facebook, there's Instagram.
Yeah, and you guys got to get on TikTok. Are you on TikTok?
I think Riz is starting to do that.
Yep.
And I think so. We're kind of slow to a lot of that. We started with absolutely nothing, zero, 3 weeks ago when the single came out. And I think we've gotten 16,000 streams.
That's awesome.
Which is pretty good. And we've got, I think, over 7,000, what do they call it, monthly...
Subscribers?
I don't know if they're subscribers
or downloads.
Listeners. Are they I'm not real hip to the whole social thing and how that works. You're
kind of like me, then. You're saying, right?
I'm an old. Riz knows I'm an old dinosaur, and I even said that to him. I said, "Look, man," I said, "Are you good with all these old dinosaurs I got together playing with you?" But he is. He loves them, and
well, that's the good thing about having someone his age. I was really opposed to TikTok, never wanted to get on it, but then I found I started our page, and I was like, this is actually not that bad. But I think that you guys would shine on TikTok, so he needs to get on that.
He's making a lot of great headway, and he's doing a lot of great videos. He does everything.
That's awesome.
Himself, he's just in there doing it, and But yeah, we're trying to figure it out, and we're trying to move it forward.
It's a new day.
It is.
Oh, I do have one question for you before we end. Is there a band out there nowadays that you're really digging? A new band that you're really digging?
I am.
Okay.
And it's new to me. Bob Marley. I got to tell you, this is a true story. We were doing that Reggae Rise Up, and I was in Florida, man, and I thought, we seen the movie. We went out and watched the movie, which was cool. And but I dug up this concert. I think it's 1976. It's Bob Marley live at the Rainbow in London or somewhere in England.
Oh, wow.
Phenomenal. And I'm watching, and it's just a whole new experience for me, man.
Sure.
This music, and it's so, their culture, and to spend all that time in Kingston where we flew in. I mean, talk about poverty. I mean, it's crazy to look at how people live and to think about all the things that we do take for granted.
Sure.
We can't help it. That's how we grew up. And, but to spend some time there, and now to get behind what his music was to so many, because it wasn't something I was really familiar with. I mean, sure, I heard a few songs here and there, but so I would say,
that's awesome.
The new Bob Marley record. You got to check it out.
Check it out. Fresh eyes on that. All right. Well, Troy, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me.
We're going to put everything out there.
Yeah.
And we'll talk to you soon. So cheers.
Yeah, cheers.
All right. Till next time.
Cheers to you, Dan.
All right. Thank you.
Bye.
All right. God bless.
All right.
Hey, you've just watched or listened to another episode of Nashville on the Rocks. If you like what we do, make sure you hit the subscribe button. And don't forget to follow us on all of our socials and on your favorite podcast streaming apps. Thanks, and we'll see you next time.